right, welcome back to the Countertop podcast. This is a podcast where we bring topics to the table, go ahead and kind of discuss them. Once again, they can be funny, sad, political, all of the above. We try not to every week to do heavy topics, but sometimes it just happens. We appreciate you stopping by. Once again, we are on Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, all of the major podcasting apps, as well as YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, so on and so forth. So anywhere that you want to go look for us, we'll probably be there. As you can kind of see, there's only two of us today, so work calls for Ray. So we're going to go ahead and go through with this podcast and kind of hopefully be a little bit easier podcast and still get it through. So my topic I'm going to kind of jump into today is kind of the legalization of drugs. One, marijuana being the big one that has become, first medical, but then is becoming more and more legalized across the nation. I know a few states just recently passed bills that it will become legal in their states, one being Arizona. But then two, you take the part of what you see in Oregon where they've gone kind of full on everything's legal or a lot of items are legal, adding psychedelics in there as well. So I kind of find it fascinating as well as kind of where the world's going, and so I thought it was an interesting topic, more of in general of where this kind of leads to. I know there's kind of a couple different viewpoints on everything should be legal. You control your own body. Government shouldn't regulate that, which I definitely understand. But then you also have the kind of the counter argument to not all drugs are safe. And yes, legalization helps. In some studies do show that it does help the use of them. Kind of if they're legal, it's not as abused as some others. But then you also kind of have that counter argument of more people are going to try certain drugs that could be addictive and so on and so forth. So kind of throwing it out there to give your thoughts on it, Tanner, and see what you think a little bit of that.
So House Bill HR 3884 is going to be introduced, what's it say, Wednesday, December 2nd. The proposition is for the changes to the federal marijuana legalization bill. Interestingly, on your topic too, Thailand just nationally
decriminalized cannabis off their narcotics list.
Right. And I've been saying this, and I wish I was more extreme on my views on either way for, entertainment purpose, if nothing else, right? But, it's going to happen in our lifetime. I think most of us knew it would because of the, one, the age of our country, right? Or, every generation is the most progressive, right?
Yep,
so
exactly.
And so it's happening faster than I thought. I thought I had to wait till retirement to Willie Nelson my life away. But, what's interesting about if the federal government changes the legalization guidelines for cannabis or other drugs, that opens up employment opportunities for many people who use it recreationally that otherwise can't get employment from federally insured or otherwise contracted or government work, which the U.S. government is the largest employer. So I think in general, if you look at overall benefits to it, you have folks who are doing something that we both would generally view as non-criminal, are now afforded opportunities of still contributing to society without having to go on the fringes to enjoy something they may enjoy doing or otherwise. I think there's something to that. I think, we need to move to that way. And I think probably the most controversial topic would be the retroactive um, pardoning or otherwise release of those who were convicted.
Yeah.
I struggle with that too. I don't know what your opinion is, but if you last week were arrested for having cannabis and this week it's now legal, should you be held to your original sentence? I say no.
It's definitely a difficult topic because part of laws and the way they are is at that moment in time that he is illegal, right? And so from that standpoint, you look at the law, you broke the law no matter what if it became legal or not. I do fall more on the fence of I don't think you should be held accountable because part of what and of course it's not never going to be admitted, but I think the laws on drugs are very slippery slope and that it becomes more of not just the law itself, but also the kind of power grab at the war on drugs and all of the above that come with that. And so I think that's where it's definitely I see it from both sides, but you're never going to get the we got it wrong
Well,
from the government and saying that this is why
well,
we're
it
doing it.
depends, right? You got the war on drugs that turned into the opioid crisis and pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
depending on which culture it's affecting,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's okay. So if you are the war on drugs, but I am in, I have an opioid, disease, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
like, wait a minute, you know, you can't you can't be consistent with drugs either,
Yeah.
in terms of your enforcement of it. So, in that mind, if society has changed their rules, you should look retroactively at those. Not saying you. I'm not saying you get reparations or
Yeah.
whatever for someone who's, but at that point, if you had a possession charge, and that was last week, and you're in jail, and this week it's now legal. Why would we want to assume not only the responsibility of upkeep for a prisoner, which is very expensive,
Yeah.
for some like just for the sake of saying, oh, it was wrong back then, but we as society say it's not wrong now? I think that's fundamentally flawed.
Yeah, no, and I think I definitely lean towards that. Um, I hope because and I wish that it was portrayed as society has changed. It somewhat is depending on who you're talking to, but I feel like the laws are going to lean more towards your this has just changed now, and that narrative doesn't come out that us as a society has deemed this a reasonable activity or whatever that may be, however you want to word that. That's where I think the from the outsider looking in that may have not been involved with drugs or not done drugs, I kind of see where they're coming from in that sense of, well, it's legal now, but you still broke the law because it's not portrayed as the society has changed its viewing on that. It's more of,
Yeah.
and that's just a narrative basis that I think it comes across as that
Right,
way.
because then you would have to ask the question of, well, what benefit is it to you
Mm-hmm.
that that person remains in incarceration?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, and that's it's nothing but a detriment to society in terms of our actual tax dollars
mm-hmm.
spends that mental health on that person who's going to be released.
Yeah,
It's not like you're going to have a life sentence for a drug charge, right? If we're talking about a simple, holding,
yeah,
even with holding intent to sell, it's not a life. I mean, you are just damaging that person and making them not productive for society for a long period of time and assuming all the cost
yep,
for something that we have said, hey, it's okay now.
yeah,
It's flawed, and you
yeah,
just have to ask those people who are on the fence about it, saying, "Well, it was wrong when you did it, so it's still wrong now." What are you gaining from it?
mm-hmm.
Is it a personal vendetta that you're working through? Is it something that you strongly believe on some kind of emotional scale that you cannot allow yourself to say, "Oops"?
yeah,
I just those things I don't get because there isn't anything but negative side to holding someone for something that is now legal. It's like, why would we do that?
yeah,
And it's not like speeding, right? If you're speeding and you're going 85 and a 75 and the next week they change it to 85 because, hey, lo and behold, we found out it was just fine. You're like, okay, you're out a couple $100, that's fine. No, we're talking about
Incarceration.
taking away
Yeah.
people's liberties,
Yep.
and for the so it's not the same thing. So I think there's a difference there for incarcerations.
Hmm.
Like I wouldn't say if you got fined, give it back. No,
Yeah.
no.
There should.
Yeah, that's a slap on the wrist. That should hold. It's fine. Whatever.
Yeah. No. No. Incarceration versus a penalty is definitely. You definitely have a good point there with, and I didn't even think about that, but that is a good point where it is a difference in the speeding example. I think that fits very well there. Um,
Yeah, and if you get your license removed for repeated offenses, you're gonna break the 85 anyway. So like, you
yep.
still got your license taken away. That's fine. You'll get it back some point.
Yeah. I know we're kind of talking about marijuana and the legalization there, and I don't know
Hmm.
how much you know about the Oregon's
I do.
decriminalization laws. I just wanted to read through some of these because some of them, um, from personal experience of friends, family, etc. There's some on here that I feel a little questionable towards, and I'm just going to read through the list that basically non-criminal violations. So it would be similar to traffic tickets for possessing the following: less than 1 gram of heroin, less than 1 gram or less than 5 pills of MDMA, less than 2 grams of methamphetamine, less than 40 units of LSD, less than 12 grams of psilocybin, less than 40 units of methadone, less than 40 pills of oxycodone, less than 2 grams of cocaine. Um, and
Is that
then
on your person or in your house, or is that like total?
it's possession. So if you
Okay,
get pulled over and you have that amount in your vehicle, or somehow you're if cops
it's a
in the
lot.
house, yeah, no.
That's
But
a lot.
like just alone, like just because I think this touches everyone or someone's been touched with this is oxycodone. Um,
Hmm.
it's a very popular pain medication, but
Hmm.
40 pills
It's
alone,
a,
that's a lot. And so from that standpoint, like I saw this and I was kind of, and I don't have experience with some of the others, and so like I can't relate, but I'm
hmm.
sure there's some on here that fall into that same category. But 40 pills just seems like a excessive amount to me to write a traffic ticket, especially if it's for the purpose of it's in your possession, you don't have a prescription. Like that's where I get a little leery. And I know like long term, and maybe this is the growing pains of these changes as well, that if you can have 40 pills, there may not be as much of wanting 40 pills, or that you could have these other drugs, all of that kind of, from my standpoint, just because, and like I said, it's relatable, that just seems like an excessive amount that you're kind of okay with. And I know it's anything above 40 pills, you're now getting into a
Distribution.
distribution, or a felony. It's more than a traffic ticket. And so that's kind of where I thought it was a little you know uh, interesting, I guess you could say. And I don't know what your thoughts are there, and I'm sure you've taken oxycodone over the time of being alive, and
Yeah, surgeries and stuff, and I can't take much of it because I turn into like an emotional person, and I don't want to explore that. So, um, no, what's interesting is that if you take that, um, my hope is that there are alternative public measures to help curve, educate, or otherwise do something other than just rely on the social aspect of people to self-regulate, right? Um, I'm trying to find and see if there's anything that uh, how what else they're doing, right? Because
mm-hmm.
when we say, like, if you were to take the opioid crisis, right, since that's not the war on drugs, and you would say, well, we're just going to decriminalize it, so you're not going to go to jail if you have it. That doesn't address anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? You need other programs that exist to help curb
Educate.
addictions and usage and health, and you're talking about other countries have tried dedicated places to inject to ensure
Yeah.
that you're sharing needles and you have a sanitary environment, you have health care. There's no chance of ODing because you're being, um, those are a little bit more palpable versus just saying, okay, we're just not going to arrest people for small amounts because either one, we're trying to do a quick band-aid that says we have too much in our prison systems. Okay, that might be a short-term fix, but you definitely do need a long-term, um, you know, the like I was looking at, I hate this website, so I'm not going to say it, but with the 2020 election, it says Oregon also voted to remove the threat of jail or prison time for simple possession of every drug, including cocaine and heroin. Instead, those caught with small amounts of those drugs will be able to choose between a $100 fine or a completed health assessment through an addiction recovery center. Harder drugs like cocaine and heroin would not be legally sold or distributed. Possession of higher quantities remain illegal, as do sales and distribution. The initiative also redirected savings from less incarceration and law enforcement, as well as pre-existing marijuana sales tax to addiction treatment. So, according to okay, I'll say it, it's Vox. But according to Vox, that's the mentality behind it. That they're saying the cost savings are going to go to addiction treatment, and that you at time of being, instead of caught, and let go, if you're caught, you have a fine of $100, or you have to complete a health assessment through addiction recovery center.
Mm-hmm.
That's more palpable than just what's
Yeah,
being
for sure.
articulated as just free Wild West, go have fun.
Yeah.
You know. Um, Through a separate ballot measure, Oregon allowed for the supervised therapeutic use of psilocybin. This won't mean that a person could just go to a magic mushroom dispensary and get the drug. Instead, trained facilitators at a psilocybin service center will help administer and then supervise the psychedelic trip. There's some research backing this approach showing that 1 or 2 doses of psilocybin can have lasting effects on conditions such as depression, anxiety, PTSD, and addiction. So it seems to be more complicated than just the overall decriminalization,
Yeah.
which gives me a little bit more faith in humanity, I guess.
Hope.
Yeah, hope.
Yeah. And I
They say,
just go for it.
oh, they just say 1 in 10 people with drug addiction, they're the only 1 in 10 get help. Um,
Mm-hmm.
It's due to lack of access. We have gaping holes in coverage. Renee Johnson said, a drug policy expert at Johns Hopkins University. We just don't value behavioral health care or mental health care, and so they're trying to say there's some reasoning behind it is all. But yes, I would agree. You could get caught with something smaller than 40 pills and still be inched towards care and
Yeah.
help.
Yeah. Do you feel like, and let's place our bets, um,
Okay.
the next states to follow, because this is something that I think is kind of was shocking, but also is around that corner that this is going to start kind of the dominoes falling, just like we've seen medical marijuana to recreational marijuana. What's the next state to fall into the decriminalization of other drugs? If you had to place your bet, I'm going with California.
Depend. So, oh, you're saying like all drugs, not just cannabis.
Well, yes,
Okay,
because
because Canada's is already in California.
yeah, no, I'm saying that this following the same kind of Oregon
Oh,
presidents, because I,
I
I
would say Vermont.
Vermont, okay.
I would say Vermont over California. The
Uh,
reason being is that California, I think, has more issues that they have to deal with that they would likely want to tackle first. And I don't think that the cost savings there would push it forward more than dealing with things such as like water supply,
yeah,
right? And I just think that because they're so large, that they have a lot of issues that they're trying to deal with. I don't think they're going to be first to adopt that's a pretty sweeping policy that they're going to have that many more jobs for healthcare administration and administering centers for how do you say this, psilocybin,
psilocybin.
uh,
Yep.
psilocybin. But Vermont, I think they've been pretty progressive on a
Yeah.
lot of their drug laws, and so I think that they're gonna.
I think the big thing for me was the mass exodus that's happening from California right now. That they need to create jobs and people to stay around. So that was that was where my comment was coming from
No,
for California, just saying that we need to do something. Why not make these drugs?
anybody mildly red has already left.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
well, I got you on that one. That's a good point. They had
and that's extreme, and that's why I say that. But it is interesting to see the mass exodus happening right now
yes,
with California and New York.
yes,
So that's a whole nother topic which we can go down a rabbit hole. But um, no, I bring this topic up because I find it fascinating because I didn't think in my lifetime, when I was younger at least, that we would ever get to this point.
no, I totally did.
And,
Totally knew
and
it.
I didn't think I did, and I think I came from a community and a household that was just drugs are bad, don't ask questions,
Hmm.
which made it I think made it harder to to understand fully. There's some things I don't understand, like and I can't believe I'm drawing a blank, but big concert in the woods, Woodstock, is that the one?
I mean, it's a big concert, but I don't think it's in the woods.
Well, the love and drugs and
Yeah, Woodstock is. Yeah,
yeah,
that's good.
like even when I was younger, hearing about that and those type of things, like I never put two and two together, and you just don't have those conversations with certain people, or at least in my community and my family, just about those type of things. And so, from my mind, it just never was even brought to my attention, I think. And so maybe as I grew older and kind of saw medical start coming out, then I better understood that this is around the corner. Um, I live in a state, unfortunately, that's made their own rules when it comes to medical, and changed laws that the people have passed within the state, which is very unfortunate because I think it's a step back, but then also a disservice to their people that voted for it. And
Hmm.
so, and I will go through and say I live in Utah, and so they had a law that passed medical marijuana, and then they went back and changed how the law and the verbiage was done and made it their own. So Congress at its finest. um,
Yeah, and they're going
so
through that right now in either North or South Dakota, where they made
are they?
a. It was voted into law, and then a group of, I believe they're police officers union, challenged that, stating that the law was an adjustment to the Constitution in a different way, and it didn't follow the amendment requirements. And then the counter argument was it wasn't an amendment.
Yep.
And so you'll see those because each state has their own constitution, right?
Yep.
Or if they're a commonwealth, you can whatever. But still, um, you know, yes. And I strongly believe in state rights. I
Yep.
think that that's imperative, and that they should be allowed to have their own rules because that's one of the great things about being able to move. Right? We don't have to. We have some movability. We can jobs whatever you like access it is from California if you don't like the rules. But I say let California be California
Yep.
and let Texas be Texas. And I'm not going to move to Texas.
Yep.
I've had many a job offers there. I mean, I just don't like it.
Yeah.
But I go there every year, probably 4 times a year. But just no, but go. Hey, Texas, love you, but it's not for me.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the same way. So if you go like each place that you go, it may look similar, but I think there's a lot of value in states' rights. So Utah be Utah,
Yep.
and my state isn't even close to putting anything on the ballot.
Yeah.
It's just it's a highly red state, and it's not interested
Yeah.
for any reason, medical or otherwise. It's so faux pas, like you were talking about, that it's not. I mean, I still live where there's blue laws, so whatever. So, no, it's a good topic, man.
Well, we'll
It
pass it
really
on.
is.
We're approaching halfway, so why not throw it to your topic and we'll jump into it.
So mine's the a little bit also on the controversial side. So this week was
Perfect.
interesting. Yeah. So this week was interesting in video game news. So uh, I know we're both a bit of nerds here, but there was three articles that came across that I thought was interesting, and I thought I would get your point of view before I shared mine. The first being Grand Theft Auto. Have you heard of that game?
I have.
Yeah, they they have this casino, and basically it allows people to spend their real world money gambling. But it's targeting to kids, so it's fine.
And when you
Uh,
say real world money, it's not necessarily giving you money back, right? It's in
oh,
game.
you could never cash out. You
Yeah,
only could cash in,
just to
and
clarify that.
you buy in game currency with your real money, and then you could gamble it away.
Yep.
Um, okay, but anyway, it was noticed just yesterday. From it was posted to Reddit, of course, on GTA Online, from Armin Lakatos. Um, why are there urinals in the female restrooms? And so there was a change done this week in the Diamond Casino's bathrooms, and someone it was originally hypothesized that someone made a mistake. However, venturing into the comments a bit more, explained away by Armin Lactose and others' confusion, it turns out that the bathrooms have been updated for modern sensibilities, providing options for those of all genders. It seems to be something that's not explained well in the game, as to questions that have been posted on the Reddit and elsewhere once more. So, again, it was just a change. Moving on to the second one, have you heard of a game called Destiny 2?
I have.
So again, yesterday, Bungie, the developer for Destiny 2, confirms that two characters, Osiris, who is an older gentleman who travels in around and tries to save the world from another side, and Saint 14, which is like this badass little warrior dude. Um, they have been confirmed to be gay and in a romantic relationship.
Interesting.
So, and then the last one, which I'm sure you've heard about, is the Animal Crossing Space Buns controversy.
I actually have not heard of this one.
Yes, so since I got the Nintendo Switch off of you, we've been playing it a lot here, and they released some new hairstyles. Um, and one of the things was that Afro Puffs were introduced to the game, which look like something similar to, but obviously I don't know hairstyles. I'm learning about this as I'm reading the article. We're close to space buns, which they're both balls on top of a girl's head, offset from the center. Um,
Isn't that Princess Leia?
I know because they're not over the ears. They're
Oh, okay.
like
Gotcha.
like Mickey Mouse
Oh,
style.
okay. Gotcha. I see what you're saying.
But speaking from the uh, this person, Funky Joseph, in June, there was some cultural aspects added to the game, and I'm just going to read this quote to you. It says, "My villager can now be me," and I love that. But it took so damn long. It's hard for me to even praise Nintendo for including it now when I and so many others needed it years ago. The bar for representation feels so dishearteningly low that companies are praised for including content that should have been there from the start. That we celebrate having our hair in game as a quote unquote win, or having a black character that isn't a stereotype as something innovative. She goes on to say, it's obviously a black hairstyle, something that people push hard to get in, and the obvious trolls will say things like space buns in a seemingly quirky way, but they know what they're doing. They are erasing. Um, there's been backlash from folks that so these people are, this is another quote from someone else, uh, they just call her Morgan. um, at least call them Afro pups if you must wear them. For these people appropriating a hairstyle and renaming it so they can pretend it's not black style, she continued in a Twitter message. So there's a lot of backlash about a hairstyle in Animal Crossing, right? And so between those three articles within the same week, this week, um, do you have any thoughts on, I guess, overall the transition on gaming culture.
You weren't kidding about a heavy topic. This is hard for me because you're making, and I don't want to make this sound disingenuous or anything like this, but I think a you as a person, you can identify as or be as, or you know, anything you want, as long as you're not harming another person. That's my view on, you know, trans rights to LGBTQ. You know, the list goes on from that standpoint. And so, um, but when it comes down to, say, video games or um, even art, or you know, this video games are a story, a expression, a art piece, a something someone created. And so from my standpoint, I feel like you are not accepting what that person created, good, bad, or other. Because you know, for like Destiny, you're flying around and you're shooting aliens and you're shooting all these creatures. That from that standpoint, that's as long as that's part of the storyline that these two characters are gay, great. But I would hope that that storyline started at the very beginning of that story, not as a cultural transition into acceptance. And so that's where, from my standpoint, this is all art, and you can word that a million different ways. But I think that you're telling someone, and it's that cancel culture, it's that this is, you need to be right and inclusive to certain degrees. Where I think at the same time you're talking about storylines, you're talking about things that may not even be real, but you're also saying this needs to fit my narrative as a person. You know, it's then that's where it kind of, yes, I want video games to all be accepting of everyone, and but I think by saying that it needs to be changed, I think that's where the dilemma is. I think that there should be more from a developer side, that this should expand the availability to create more stories around transgender, or more stories of uh, different cultures, different you know, characters, and I think that's where that needs to be stemming from. Not that we need to make an acceptance to already existing storylines. And I know that's it may come across as a negative towards that, and so that's where I want to make sure that I'm not as a, you know, in your real personal life, and from that standpoint, I just think that all of these are stories. You know, from GTA, where you can go flying in a aircraft to jumping out of a plane and not dying, and you know, all of the craziness that happens in there, to say you need to include toilets in the women's restroom or urinals in the women's restroom, or if they do, why does it matter? Like that's where I kind of fall, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, it's like I think there was an article that says I identify as an attack helicopter. I don't know if you've read this,
No, I haven't.
but it's that same. So if you identify as an attack helicopter, and there's an article about someone trying to identify as a attack helicopter, do you want that included in the game? Like where does that bridge stop from? This is a story, someone's telling it. This is art. Someone's telling this is their personal belief or acceptance or thought of how this should be laid out. Does that need to be included? And so that's where I get a little on the fence about where you're trying to change art. That's what I see video games as.
I would, yeah. I
I want to
mean, there's
rant on there.
no. It's all right. So on the Destiny thing, the writers did say that it always has been a gay couple, and that way they're just putting a rumor to rest, kind of thing. And so that one was, like you're saying, that
It's
is
genuine.
right. It's there's nothing wrong with that. Where I think it was funny when Apex Legends came out and they just started giving the entire backstory to characters when there is no story whatsoever. You're going, why? Like you're pandering at this point because no one really asked, and
Mm-hmm.
you're not giving us a story. There is no narrative. You don't like. there isn't anything. And so when that came out, it's not like anybody says, no, I don't want to play a female character, because I've been, everyone's been playing female lead roles forever. And it's like, okay, so it's not about that. So I agree with what you're saying, in that if it isn't a part of it, then why do you it's almost icky to me to have to hear people who are just saying stuff to try and get woke points, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, that's fine. The interesting thing is, all three of these things are very different, and
Mm-hmm.
and I put them all together for more of the sense that they're not the same.
Yep.
That, like, when you talk about Destiny or GTA, what's really interesting is that there isn't a character in the online mode. There isn't a storyline in the online mode, and it's a live service that is forever changing. And so for there, when they make changes to be more reflective of the culture, I don't seem to have an issue with it, because again, it's okay. Like, why not? It doesn't hurt anything.
Yeah.
Like, why do I give a shit if the fictitious bathroom has urinals? Like, cool, fine. You don't piss in the game.
Yep.
What's it matter? Nothing. Like, even if it did matter, like if you change the placards on the doors, whatever, fine. I don't really care. It's
Yeah.
why I get offended
It's
about
it's,
that
it's
stuff.
almost an Easter egg
Right.
to some degree.
Um, and so you're like, okay, they didn't make an announcement. They didn't try and get woke points. Someone found it and go, was this an Easter egg, or is this like a meaningful change? And it's like, oh, that's a meaningful change that we just happen to do because it's the right thing to do. Okay, I
Yeah.
mean, GTA sucks for a lot of reasons, but that's not one of them.
Yeah. No, and I
But
think that's where, once again, you're not changing a storyline within that game. And so that's where I feel like it's a little more not accepting, but I feel like it's more genuine. You're not pandering. You're not trying to get
you're just trying to get
attention.
better.
You're just trying to say, hey, we have X, Y, Z, people that want to do this, and we're gonna do it. Like, great,
Cool.
for all means, go ahead and do it. Um, the one that I get a little, it falls in a weird area for me because it's culture, and so from like the Animal Crossings,
Mm-hmm.
from a black character, certain hairstyles. Part of it is there's two sides of this coin as well. Is in today's culture you'll get cancel culture for I think a few years back, or even recently, there was people wearing hoop earrings, and if they weren't of I think it was a Spanish descent, they were being trying to be canceled because of that.
Okay.
And so I kind of tie this together with when it's a video game, and yes, if you want a black character and they add it, that's great. But then if you also kind of tie into, um, well, I need this because this is part of my heritage or my culture, but then is it also going to go to the other side of things of, well, now it's in there. Now a white character is wearing um, and let's go to like a Navajo headdress. That's
Mm-hmm.
where all of this kind of gets funky, where it's a customizable character, and the developers decide to include these certain items, and I haven't played Animal Crossing, so bear with me as well. But are they all humans, or are they cats and dogs and whatever you want to be? And I don't know that answer. Are they
I
a,
think so. It's weird because you only can be a person, but the only other inhabitants are animals.
okay? but at the same time, it's is there and is there white, black, brown, blue, green? I don't know all of that information, but like, where does the line kind of start and finish of what should be there, what shouldn't be there, as well as at the end of the day, it's a video game where it's once again a story that someone's telling. And I don't think getting a color added to a game or a hairstyle is necessarily a win for anybody. I think that's just an add-on, and I do see it from, if it's a heavily character-based game where, like, let's say GTA, your main thing is creating a character, and that character is what you do everything with.
Yeah, that's Animal Crossing.
Okay. And I don't know, did they not have black characters in it? Did they not have?
So this one was the hairstyles were added,
Okay.
um,
And is
because
there every hairstyle on every other culture as well? That's where it kind of, just because they don't have it doesn't mean it's disingenuous from where it's coming from.
yeah, I mean you have development cycles, right, where you only can put so much in at a time, and yada yada yada. I honestly, for me, I found the bickering entertaining, but I know, at least from where I'm at, I'm not educated enough and I don't understand to necessarily say one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
If, my family
100%.
had, if my family had that hairstyle in the game and I walk past, would I notice? No.
Yeah.
Would I say anything? No. But if it got on Twitter and someone started complaining about it, I don't talk on Twitter, but dude, it would like show it to people going, hey, did you see this? Like I did
Yeah.
tonight, going, look at this. This is a thing.
Yeah.
Um, People are upset about it, and the reason I read the quotes was because I don't understand. And
Yeah.
so when you talk about if I were to try and have empathy for something as not being, say, like um, uh, unibrows, right?
Mm-hmm.
If unibrows weren't in game, and I felt strongly that unibrows were a part of my culture, and that I have not seen a unibrow, and unibrows only existed on giraffes. I don't know. Trying to make this as far fetched as
Yeah. Yeah.
possible. As soon as I saw it, I would be excited if someone said, "Oh, look, that's just a Cyclops thing or something," and you're like, "Well, wait a minute. That I actually signed a petition or something on that, and now you already took it away from me." In that far fetched trying to stay as because I got nothing.
Yeah. And
I'm a,
I'm same
I'm
there
a
with you.
but no, like I'm fine with it. But I think that the weird part would be if it went one step further, and I would generally say that in character creation on video games, if hairstyles or features such as hoop earrings were limited to only specific races or genders, you would then contradict the efforts of other groups to have inclusion.
Oh,
And I
100%.
think that's a slippery slope where if you want to have inclusion in all video games to represent cultural norms, it would be dangerous to start to exclude those offerings to colors.
Yeah.
And let's go with an extreme example that says if you are black, but your skin tone is not of dark complexion, but your hair matches that style, you should also have representation.
Yeah.
So it's just a dangerous thing to try and immediately block. If we can say it's fine to have inclusion, then it can't be fine to have what's the opposite of inclusion?
Exclusion.
Exclusion. Thank
We'll
you.
go with that.
Uh, yeah. So that's
Yeah.
where I would probably end it.
Yeah, no, and that's where I think we have to look at the bigger picture of was it on purpose? Those type of scenarios that was it on purpose that was not included, or is it just that it also is just wasn't made at that time and developed at that time? And I think that's where I think part of the cancel culture. There's not always a full look at.
I think the Twitter kind of went like it was a white girl who said, "Oh, look at my cute space buns," and someone said, "Bitch, get those off your white ass because those are Afro puffs,"
Yeah.
and that's where it started. Of like, maybe it could be honest mistakes, or it could be like ignorant people like me going, "Oh, that's a cute hairstyle,"
Yeah.
because you know how often I change my character looks in games. It's for a night.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's all right. And video games are just such a weird balance between you know
Expression.
expression and futuristic and out of this world and realism and non-realism. It's just so all over the place. So it's just really hard for me to try to understand and also demand, and it's hard because I am a white American that I haven't seen oppression like others, but at the same time, from my feeling at least, that it's video games is that one place that it's just an art expression, and that's where it there may be aliens and this and that, and doesn't mean that everything needs to be included because it is a story. It's could be completely fiction. So,
Hmm.
and that's part of where I think I come from is it's an art expression, and maybe some people don't see it that way, but it is. You know, these developers are artists by how they're building these things. So
Yeah.
that's my final thought.
Well, I'm surprised we actually filled an hour.
Yeah, we're getting close. So, any final thoughts for before we sign off?
No, I just have to give shit to Ray since you guys gave me shit for missing a
Oh,
week.
we will 100%. Actually, no, we'll probably not, just to make you feel worse.
Oh.
No, once again, guys, we appreciate your time and you guys spending it with us. We would appreciate any likes, subscriptions, or comments. We'd love to hear from you guys, and we will keep doing this. Once again, I'm Brandon. That's Tanner.
Sure. Sorry.
No, you're good. I left it open ended. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, all of the others. We appreciate it. Thanks, guys.